Alrighty. We are live.
This is the Newtown Square EAC meeting, December 7th. I will start by doing a roll call. Dane Shoemaker. Here. Joe Pinto. Here. Cindy Mahalo.
Here.
Janet Travanis.
Here.
Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney.
Present.
Bruce Killen, I'm here. Steve Neese.
Here.
Here. So it looks like all of us are here. Let's next do our moment of silence.
We are live.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States Square EAC meeting to the republic under which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Dane Shoemaker. Joe Pinto. Cindy Mahalo.
It's your voice.
Janet Travanis.
Here.
Sheila
Delayed
O'Sullivan
recording.
Feeney, Bruce Killen, I'm here. Steve Neese.
Here.
Here. So it looks like all of us are here. Let's next do our moment of silence.
We are live.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States Square EAC meeting to the republic under which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Dane Shoemaker. Joe Pinto. Cindy Mahalo.
It's your voice.
Janet Travanis.
Here.
Sheila
Delayed
O'Sullivan
recording.
Feeney, Bruce Killen, I'm here. Steve Neese. Here. So it looks like all of us are here. Let's next do our moment of silence.
So Bruce, is somebody taking minutes since Harry's?
Yeah,
Oh,
yes.
okay. I'm sorry. I missed that.
Item 6 is
So Bruce, is somebody taking minutes since Harry's?
Yeah,
Oh,
yes.
okay. I'm sorry. I missed that. So, Bruce, is somebody taking minutes since Harry's, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yes.
Yes, so I'm here to report on the gathering at the Haverford
Community Center.
Communities that occurred on October the 22nd. And the township sponsored my attendance there by paying for my ticket. This was a wonderful way to network with many other EACs in the area. There were at least 16 EACs, about 60 people that attended. And it was a pretty full day event with a plenary in the morning and then breakout sessions in the afternoon. I was particularly interested in the PACleanEnergy.com website, which has a host of information on promoting RGGI, community solar, community choice aggregation, energy storage, and education webinars. So if there's material that we want to study, I suggest that we go there first.
Can you send it up that link?
Yes, I will. That occurred on October the 22nd.
In case we missed the first one.
You want to correct anything in there?
All of it. This was a wonderful way to network with many other EACs in the area. There were at least 16 EACs, about 60 people that attended. And it was a pretty full day event, with a plenary in the morning and then breakout sessions in the afternoon.
It's all.
I was particularly interested in the PACleanEnergy.com.
765.
Which has a host of information on promoting RGGI, community solar, community choice aggregation, energy storage, and education webinars. So if there's material that we want to study, I suggest that we go there first.
Can you send it up that link?
Yes, I will.
I wrote it minutes for today, during my print.
Other EACs.
I don't remember this.
Nice. Say,
Pretty full day event.
the house. Work with people. He was just about- It's a good neighborhood. Yeah, we shared it free.
Promoting RGGI, community solar, community storage, and education website. So if there's materials that we want to study, I suggest we go there. Yes, I will.
It's to get in. You're back from, you had something to know.
That is so true.
Yeah.
Starting from where?
Yeah, start all over.
Okay, so we were the conference which took place at the Haverford Community Center was well attended by many EAC in our area and had about 60 people in attendance as well. So we were able to network. I did during lunch as well with Haverford, which always has so many good ideas. I particularly wanted to point out the website pacleanenergy.com, which has a wealth of material to help environmental advisory councils with climate action plans, as well as clean energy advocacy with promoting RGGI, community solar, community choice aggregation, energy storage, and education webinars. And in addition, I wanted to highlight We Can Serve PA, which sponsored this meeting on the 22nd of October. And they have wealth of information that you can get onto their tools with a number of articles for helping us. And they are sponsoring on November the 9th and the 16th, 2 granting webinars. They call them Grants Finding, Writing, and Managing Oh My. So there's part 1 and 2, and this group, We Can Serve PA, is really set up for EACs. So this is a good site to go to.
Fantastic website.
Yes, it is. Right, thank you. With climate action.
One of the things they have on this website is a life of documents that might be of value, like conservation easements. What I should say, you so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, it's huge. Wonderful.
And in
So-
addition, it is the February 25th will be a Zoom conference. And I was asked to sit in on the planning session for what we will address during that. So we're in that process.
This is the statewide.
The
EAC
statewide, it'll
event.
be a statewide, yes, right. So I know you all can't see this, but so these are all of the articles or guides that are available through We Can Serve PA. Oh, well, that was it when it comes to We Can Serve PA
Okay,
or gathering.
Yeah, thank you. That was excellent.
Oh,
Sounds
thank
like
you.
it was
Third
great.
time around.
you're on here, 7.4, but we'll let Cindy.
Okay,
Tell us about the conference she went to. Both on Saturdays, by the way. So big.
Actually,
Yes.
this was Friday.
Oh,
It was a work day.
Okay.
I finished work. So I also wanted to thank the township for funding the registration fee. This was the 2022 Tree Canopy Conference, which is an annual event hosted by Morris Arboretum. It's probably the 4th or 5th time I've attended. It was held at Haverford College. There were probably 80 people there. And some of them were from EAC, some of them were for some of the botanical gardens around here, Longwood Gardens, Chanticleer, Morris Arboretum, a lot of tree professionals from the tree companies around here, and a few lay people like myself. It was a full day of various topics and sessions. I'll go through it quickly. The first one was from the director of the Ambler Arboretum of Temple University. And she spoke about how a year ago on September, an EF2 tornado with winds up to 130 mph hit the Arboretum and basically probably took down 95%. Just wiped them out. 510 trees and most of the structures. They lost 90% of their old growth forest. She got choked up when she was talking about this
Okay.
because it was such a traumatic thing. But there were a few relevant things I thought were lessons learned is she said, you know, that could, I was trying to relate it to our township and I was thinking, well, when have we lost stuff like that? Well, We did have trees that we lost in Eagle Park after that derecho and along here. So a few of the takeaways are, she said, use technology to document what you have. And she said that they were so fortunate that they had recently obtained drone footage of the entire property. And because they had that, that helped them when they filed their insurance claim on documenting what was there beforehand. And she also said that they applied to FEMA for like disaster funds, and that FEMA up till this point did not fund the replacement of plants or landscape. That wasn't viewed as part of infrastructure. But they lobbied and made the case that this was infrastructure for the legal things, and it was approved. So she said they have set a precedent that their plants are the equivalent of classroom education, just like a microscope, because they are a part of the Smithsonian Field Station and they use it for teaching purposes. But that was interesting. She also said that she suggested that when you lose trees or things like that, she said, don't wipe the slate clean. Don't just get rid of every stump and every dead tree. She said, keep some of the evidence of the loss to remind people of what was there before. Otherwise, it's like out of sight or out of mind. And she says now they have real world examples of stumps and things like that, that they've selectively left some things. And they're using this, they've totally changed their paradigm of how they use their campus and their arboretum to teach. And they're switched it all to climate change. And they said this storm was a result of climate change. This is what happens. This is what's different. We're losing trees, things like that. So I thought, you know, when we cut down all that trees we lose to the ash borers, you know, should we lose it? Should we leave a few? You know, not the whole height, but like snags. And she talked about the environmental, besides the educational value of leaving those things, the environmental benefit. Then they had a presentation from PICO about their vegetation management programs, and Davy Resource Group, the arborists that they employ. And you know, a lot of it was just them kind of explaining why they do what they do, and that they have a 3-part program: preventative, a 4-year cycle where they trim within the wire zone. And then, you know, they do have a strategic approach on how they do this. And then the second one is they focused on the worst performing vegetation sections, those where they have a lot of outages. And then they have corrective, where they go out and just on to storms. But I did make a note to try to get some of their community education slides where they talk about why they do what they do and why they cut things the way they do. And the fact of like why you shouldn't plant trees that are 800. A lot of people plant stuff that really doesn't make sense. And to that end, I think I was noticing the trees that they planted that on 252 in front of the car dealership or something there. They planted all these trees, but then I was noticing they look kind of big. So I almost thought about sending them.
252?
Well, it was Chester Pike.
Yeah,
Chester
yeah.
Pike. They looked kind of big.
Mhm.
I thought, well, I certainly hope that the arborist did the species. The third presentation was about the human health and safety benefits of urban forests, where they had someone from the U.S. Forest Service talk about research and study that's been done on urban greening practices and the linkage with mental health and violence prevention. And she cited some research that's been done, the linkage between residential green cover and healthcare costs. And she says there is a move in the field to view nature as medical therapy and park prescription. And she said that doctors are prescribing outdoor activity for their patients. And it's called Prescribe Outdoor. It's a partnership between CHOP, primary care unit, Let's Go Outdoors, and the U.S. Forest Service to help people locate and use safe, accessible, and convenient public green space to increase their nature experience. And they even have a prescribing vitamin N for nature kit that the Forest Service makes available. And she cited us that there's a study about the increase in heart disease and attacks in some Midwestern cities following the removal of ash trees. So, Christine. Then they talked about some people from CHOP and the PHS talked about, and Bertram's Garden talked about tree planting and equity in urban forestry. And some of the takeaways there I thought were really relevant to the township's tree planting program. And she said they have this very ambitious goal. Their goal is to get a 30% canopy cover, and they need, she cited that they feel they really need to be neighborhood and community focused and work with local groups. And she said, when they do this, they get a lot of pushback from people in the neighborhoods. People say they do not want trees. And so she asks why. And she says, in some cases, they're dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome, where a tree has landed on someone's house or landed on their car or upheavaled their sidewalk, and then they tripped and fell, or a tree died and was never removed, and it was just ugly, and just a million reasons why. So she said, listen of why people are rejecting trees. Like they ask, who's going to deal with the leaves? Am I going to have to rake the leaves? Who's going to deal with the fruit when it falls on the sidewalk? So she said, listen and ask how you can help deal with that. And when you're selling it, connect the immediate appearance impact with longer term impact. And she offered some other tips about that. And then she said that they try to communicate, we will be here to help you care for this tree with you. And that's where the value of these neighborhood tree tender groups come in. It's neighbors helping neighbors. And she said, when you're trying to sell someone on the idea of planting a tree, find a different point of connection for different groups, target your sales pitch. For youth, it could be a trajectory for a career path. For a homeowner, it could be reducing electric costs. For a new home buyer, it could be creating a sense of place. And then they have block captains and they ask, how do you feel about trees? What do you need from trees? What is it you would be looking to get from planting trees? So more details about that. That was interesting. Then we had a presentation on shade tree ordinances, challenges and opportunities. And the gentleman was the executive director of the Pendle chapter of the International Society of Floriculture. And he said, there's no one single ordinance that works for every community. Each community should determine its own unique needs and how its tree ordinance would fulfill those needs. It said, yes, it's helpful to look at tree ordinances from neighboring municipalities, which I believe was the approach we took, and talk to people from those municipalities to find out what in their ordinance has worked well and what needs improvement. And then, he kind of went through all the basics of what should be in an ordinance. And he suggested to get your arborist sworn in by the police department and the code enforcement department so they can enforce permits. And they can take someone who's violated it to court, and that they can issue stop work orders. Not sure how it's actually structured in our town. They said if the arborist is sworn in, then I guess they can go out and just deal with this. And they don't have to wait or involve people from code enforcement or the police department. And he said that, yes, there should definitely be fines for contractors, not just for homeowners. And finally, the executive director of the Morris Arboretum talked about the impact that climate change is having on the types of trees that they're planning to plant at Morris Arboretum. That the focus has been on native plants, But given how the temperatures are changing, maybe we shouldn't be planting so many trees that are native to the Mid-Atlantic area. We should be looking to those trees that are native, like in North Carolina. Planting those trees, because when they're 20, 30, 40 years old, temperatures are going to be higher. And more trees that we have here are not going to be thriving as well. And he gave a whole list of like what's not surviving well, getting too hot, like maple trees, and white pines, which are mainstay, are the forests here, then they'll have a harder. So that might be something that would impact like our.
The palm tree, but
Oh, yeah, he had palm trees in there. I was one of them. I'm just like, no, can't go there.
That's it?
So, yeah.
Okay. Let's do this. If you wouldn't mind doing your
Okay,
piece right now, and we'll come back to my piece.
sure.
So,
So I sat in on a Zoom that had the EACs in Delaware County. And one of the updates was from about NEVI, which it's NEVI, which is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure. And this was about the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, and how there is money in there for townships to establish electric vehicle locations throughout their community, so that they're ready for when this money becomes available in the spring, that they have a plan already developed. And this, the gentleman who brought this to our attention, Dennis Rowan, I reached out to him. He has Rowan Energy integration, and I haven't heard back from him yet, but I inquired in my message whether or not he did presentations. I'd like to see what it is that we should concentrate on. I think the monies through the federal government establishes charging stations along important highways like the expressway, and turnpike.
mhm.
But we have to move into our communities. We do not want to see that anyone is left behind, that they cannot get an electric vehicle because they don't have a way of having a charge for it. And they don't want to have to drive up to Whole Foods and charge it up there. It should be someplace that is more convenient.
So Janet, to recap, what is it that's happening in the spring?
That the monies will be available to townships that have plans in place that can show that they have developed a plan for where their
Okay.
EV stations should go.
So like the grant will become
Yes.
available in the spring.
Yes.
So Steve, in terms of the township having some sort of EV infrastructure plan, which body would be responsible for that? Like if something were like what would the process be within the township for the township to decide, yes, this is important, we need to do something, and then who would drive that?
Well, I think that it would be appropriate for this group to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on that, and then get their response before we went any further, and if they're supportive, then I would say from there, they may either one, say, back to this group, if you want to work with staff and come up with a plan, or they may assign somebody to take it on. My guess is they would probably send it back to this group and say, give us some ideas of where you think that would make sense. If Whole Foods isn't a reasonable spot, because I mean, if you think about it, it's pretty close to rate. Oops. Been a really good night here. If Whole Foods isn't a reasonable spot, then I'm a little concerned what is along Route 3, because it's right there along Route 3. I mean, it would be places like that, like I would see potentially, in the shopping center where the Acme is. I would see potentially, if we, when I'm thinking of places along the route, I think you have to have places where people go. And I mean, the whole idea for me, when I think about an electric charging station, I wanted someplace where I can go and do something while my vehicle's charging, right? I mean, I think one of the downsides to electrical vehicles yet for on a trip is that who wants to spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes in a rest stop, while you're waiting for your vehicle to charge, right? You want to be able to do something while you're doing it, I mean, at least me, and that's my short attention span, right? Probably not going to pull out a book and want to sit there and read while I'm trying to get to someplace. But if I have something that I can do and accomplish while I'm doing it, then I would do that. So I think along the way, I think it is places that people would stop, and have that. And I could see,
Our parks perhaps,
huh?
our parks.
Yeah,
Perhaps?
potentially. But then it's really important how we get those out and, and do that, how that's along. But I think you're right. I think it needs to be along the corridor that, I don't think it would be good for it to be necessarily, somewhere on Goshen Road, out in the middle of nowhere, kind of, and I say in the middle of nowhere, people live on Goshen Road, so don't take it like that. But what I'm saying is, it's not necessarily one of the main corridors going through town. I would see along Route 3, I would see along 252 as places that you would want to see these.
Right. So this is the township that we're talking about, but ultimately we want to be sure that ordinances allow for charging stations in communities where perhaps they don't have garages
Sure.
or driveways. And I know I was recently in Oslo and they were all along the road, where parallel parking was. So,
Yeah, and that's going to be a challenge for here,
Sure.
just to be honest with you. I mean, because where do we have parking? We have parking really in shopping centers, right? And when you go in, I know that Equus is looking at putting charging stations in at their apartment building. And, they're actually, the demand is such that they're actually going back and adding additional charging stations from when they first came in. And the township's been supportive of that, saying, yes, go ahead and do it. I think they're adding 10 more for that very purpose. And so I think that's going to become commonplace.
yes,
I don't think there's, we wouldn't stop any apartment complex from doing that. I think the township has been very supportive when anybody came forward. We just don't have a lot of that being requested right now, but I could
It's
see
coming.
it. And it should come,
yes. right.
I mean, I look at places like Terrazza and I look at places like Dunwoody and I look at places, and I'm going to draw a name of the blank of what it's called because it's changed names. It used to be the Abs. I think it's now called Newtown Square
Yeah.
Station. If
Yes.
I think I have it right. Those places, I definitely see that it needs to be there. Where I think we're going to have the bigger challenge is in some of our neighborhoods that are older neighborhoods that don't have necessarily a lot of off-street driveway parking, but have where people have created drive spots or parking spots along the road by just kind of pulling off. And, I think when I say that, I think of neighborhoods a little bit more like behind St. Anastasia and some of those, some of those are very tight, and how people would do charging in those areas, we're going to have to get creative.
Right. And I think the technology will evolve. to make
Sure.
it Easier.
Absolutely. But going back to your question, I think something taken to the board, probably with some thoughts of like, where would be some ideal places between borders on the township along Route 3 and along 252 that would make sense.
Well, and to me, there's a couple fundamental principles you have to think about is where are these facilities going to be? Where should they be? Where could they be? And you've mentioned some of them, which kind of also implies ownership. Would they be municipally funded and on municipal property like libraries here?
Mhm.
Would they be on commercial properties like shopping
Acme.
centers and Acme? Would they be at residential developments? And like you said, the Avs or Lissitor or Ellis Preserve, where you have a high concentration, and we're getting more and more of those townhomes. So that, those are like, where would your top places be to initially put them in there? So that would be like locations, and then the other things would be, what are the current obstacles? What is it that the ordinances don't support it? Well, it sounds like they do. I mean,
We have to be sure.
Yeah, I don't think we
You know,
fight it, so to speak. Like, we're not saying you can't do this. I think the biggest challenge is, you know, the process right now is if a commercial property, and I think that's the best way to describe it, comes in, we're probably going to make them go through land development. And that's the, you know, like, is there a way that we can set it up so if they're doing this, it doesn't have to be land development?
Yeah, so, because I don't think we should be like in search of a problem here. If there's not a problem. then,
Yeah.
You know, why come up with a plan? But if there is something that could be done, like to streamline installation of these, like to correct that process, that might be something to address.
And I think it is key picking the right places. You know, I mean, like, I don't have a problem with us. We've been talking about it being here at the township building. One of the things we find, though, is this is not as easy it is to get to the township building, it's not necessarily on somebody's way, you know, and that's the challenge. I've talked to a few people that own electric vehicles. They might charge if it was here, but it would not be the place where they would think to come to charge. And so a more centrally located spot probably makes more sense, you know, in that.
You have to go where people park their cars.
Yeah,
already,
exactly.
Like where they live, at the Ave or Ellis Preserve or.
Correct.
Is there a template? Like, what's involved in a plan? Is there a sample plan? that
Well, I
we
was going to say, I think we need to see what that plan is, what the
Yeah.
requirements, what the anticipation is from the federal government
do? Mhm.
for moving forward.
Yeah,
So that we would then know, and that's why I reached out to Dennis Rowan,
okay,
because he perhaps has a handle on what's going on. Because he was the one who suggested, get your plan now, so you're ready to get in line when this money's
Yeah.
become available.
I would think a plan's more than just putting X's on a map.
Right.
It has to be
Right.
some other stuff that's.
Well, I think if you're talking, like, what they would want to know,
Uh,
typically they want shovel ready projects is what they
Yes.
call them.
mhm.
And when you think about a shovel ready project, that is, you
Engineer.
know that location is ready to go.
Uh-huh.
Like, for example, if we pick, and I'm picking on the Acme Shopping Center only because I think it's a place that a fair number of people go. If you pick that location or across the street at the Casey's area, you know, if we said that we thought there should be 2 on each side,
Uh-huh.
and available, you know, or maybe there's 5 or whatever it is. The key would be having the property owner on board saying, yes, we want to do it. You know, if we know there's funding available, we could go get the funding. Are they willing to make the match? Those kind of things are the things that I think you need to have done. And you need to have enough of the engineering design done
Sure.
that says, yeah, we've got to run an electric line from here to here to make this work. And it's, you know, roughly X number of dollars. The units, they already know they're about X number of dollars a piece. I think they're about $6,000 or $7,000. Maybe that's what our cost was. I don't remember, but you know, it's that cost has got to be put into play. You know, and one of the other things is how is it going to be charged? And like, and when I say not charged, I don't mean plug in charge. I mean, how is the electric
have.
charge? You know, I have to say, we put it in Phoenixville. We did that probably 12 years ago now. We put it into the town or borough parking lot. And for the first year, we didn't charge anything to get people used to knowing it was there. And then when we started charging, of course, everybody was like, why are you charging? Well, because there's a cost to doing this.
Right.
You know, we did it, we purposely didn't do it, but there was a cost to charging. I mean, there, you know, because it's all done usually credit card and there's, you know, and so there's this infrastructure that you have to put into place. It's not as simple as just having a plug. You now have to have internet capability and those kind of things. And so it's a little bit more involved than just saying I put a station in.
Yeah.
You can do it through an app on your phone.
So, yeah,
Linked to a credit card.
Yes.
But what he's talking about is
Uh,
the PUC controlling the rates and all the other, that's the aftermarket issues, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of how it's billed, how it's charged, and what were the conditions, because then you're
Like
purchasing
evaluating
basically a
things.
product without being disclosed about particulars, so
Yeah.
that's really the particulars that they need to know about.
so anyway, there's like those kind of things need to be worked out before you go get the money.
Right.
Yep.
So now's a good time to start.
Yep.
Okay, now we're gonna go to
Back to you.
7.3.
Okay.
I invited people to send me a list of things they'd like to see me accomplish or the group accomplish kind of near and midterm. People have responded. I got 30, I put a spreadsheet together, it's 35 entries on it. There's some redundancy. They can be put into categories. And what I will leave you guys with is, and I'll do my best to get the ones that, you know, are clearly mine, before I leave. But, it'll be just a spreadsheet that has a description of the item, what program it might fit under. If it has a due date, the owner of it, and, next steps. So it won't be 35 items, it'll be 10 items with subcategories. And as an example, outreach was a big one. Talking to businesses, residents, and schools, that was a big one. And it's all the same thing, and promoting what these institution and residents can do. Instead of just saying, you should compost. You know, maybe publish a list of the half dozen things that people can do, you know, maybe turn their spotlights off at night. You know, people want to do something, and it's a matter of communicating that to them. And in terms of communicating with the businesses, that fits perfectly under Dane's program, the Green Business Initiative. So other categories are submit resolutions and ordinance, you know, when they're appropriate. And actually know the process. You guys should know the process of how a resolution and an ordinance flows through the township organization. Continue to work on the sustainability metrics and line items. Support funding. You guys are doing the grants, right? I mean, you're gonna try to lead grants. That's.
Yeah, we're gonna lead grants, but that doesn't mean that some others, you know, may not want to target something,
Yeah,
and that's fine too.
I thought we could help find them and contribute content when necessary. Advise the other committees. Just as an example, if we think a trail would be nice to put someplace, we don't tell the supervisor, but I think we tell the trail committee because they've got the voice and the charter to do that. I have been emptying my files of stuff I collected on trails, and John Custer is no longer responding to me because I've sent.
He changes address.
No, I also send him to Anthony, I forget his last name. Yeah, and he stopped responding too. No, but there's good stuff out there. I have reviewing some of the code, making suggestions. I have comment letters on there. I have maintenance of both the rain garden, Gable Park, and other things that we've done on the list. I have a wish list. You know, if you were the president of Newtown Square, what would you guys want? It would be nice to see, you know, independent of money. independent of doability, but just kind of a wish list. And your administrative stuff, that's kind of simple. Who's doing the agendas, who's doing the minutes, who's doing the reports, and who's gonna get to know the township software for doing some of these things. Pretty easy. Rose helps a whole bunch in getting that stuff done. So I'll put these in categories, and what I'd like to do is send it out like in 2 weeks. And then we can discuss it in detail at our next meeting. And like I said, it'll be a spreadsheet that you guys can throw out or run with, but it'll at least be like all in one place.
Sounds like a lot of work and we appreciate it.
Oh, glad to do it. Glad to do it.
Thank you, Bruce.
The next item on our agenda is 7.5, which is the township newsletter article. I'll just throw out my 2 ideas. I think the EAC needs visibility, and it'd be nice to have a little blip to say the township has this organization that does this. The other thing would, and I just mentioned, what can residents do? 5 bullet points is another alternative. Does anybody else have any thoughts on it's like December 15th? There's a deadline, early December to get something in. Yeah, I can't.
I think that's right. I don't have it right in front of me. I was
Yeah.
gonna try to see.
And when would that drop? That's
What-
like a March, or is that February, March?
It's basically 8 weeks after we get the information, 8 to 9 weeks before it's in the people, in folks' mailboxes,
For 2 months. So
almost 2 months.
So if we're talking mid-December, then it's mid-February.
Yeah, it's a longer run period than we had with our last newsletter company. And we're having a hard time, even on the staff side, getting used to that period of time because a lot of times it's coming out and we realize we should have had it in the one before because it's the way it's going. So hopefully we'll do better this year. And we'll be able to make sure that we have groups that have a better understanding of when it's hitting the boxes, because that's really what matters.
Yeah.
People write an article, George was like, you mean I have to do my snow stuff in August? And I was like, yes, you have to do your snow stuff in August because of when it's going to hit. Because most people won't, but if we wait till the February issue, we probably will have had,
Those will be gone by that time.
the snow may be gone by that time, yeah.
Does that mean the next one then would be in April?
So
Do like a
the next
birthday.
due date
Be more geared.
And this is quarterly?
will probably be early March.
That would be the due date.
Yeah, it's like, we just got them in the mailboxes this last week. I
Yes.
think people just received them. And
Yes.
it's almost 1 month after that you get them in the mailbox that we have to have the next group's inbox.
And again, this is a quarterly publication?
It is a
or-
quarterly publication.
Okay. So this could be considered the late winter, early spring,
Yes,
when you're thinking about when people are gonna get it, what's gonna be on their minds, they're gonna be like almost maybe starting to think about gardening or.
Yeah. it would
you
be
know, like
March.
I'm thinking, like if we're doing an event in May,
Yeah.
this is the one you need it in coming up. Like you have to really think about that, like.
Because there
um,
won't be another one before May?
No,
No.
it'll come out in the middle of May. And so if you
So
have
Everything for like Earth Month
yes,
Yep.
and
Has to be in the
April.
December.
it would have to be ready to go because it'll come out in February. And then you got to think about 3 months from then before the next one's going to come out. So if you go February, you go March, April, May, that's when the next one's coming out is
Uh-huh.
sometime in May.
Right.
So I was thinking for May that I would write up something about a bird town. We are a bird town,
Yep.
because I know we discuss it here, but I
Yeah.
don't know how much the
Uh-huh.
community knows about.
So yeah, then maybe the angle is, as you think about your garden and your lawn this summer, think about making it bird friendly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, how about even discussing lawn conversion programs? Because that would really be the key issue, because you're going into March and people would be discussing it, what the advantages of that are. And, you know, maybe if you are going to keep grass, there's aeration that you could do to help break up the grass. I mean, there's so many things that are possible. So that would be something, December 15th is the deadline on that. So how much space do we have?
You mean December is the deadline for the May issue?
well, no, so like what I'm saying is typically in April, and I know this isn't necessarily your area that you had hit this time, but Earth Day, I guess would fall under you, but Earth Day is, I believe, in April,
Yes,
So
end of
if-
April.
end of April. So if you want something in the quarterly newsletter related to Earth Day, you would want to have it in December, because it would be in the February edition because it won't be, the next one won't be in until May, which would be already over.
You want your summer activities in the May one.
Yeah, your summer activities would be in the May one.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it says December 12th is the deadline. It's
Thank you.
from the email.
Yeah.
First
From
week of,
Steve.
first week of February.
So the one that just came out, you should have had your winter stuff in.
Yeah,
So, so
Salt
we're,
reduction.
we're
and
into
energy
right,
conservation.
we're into spring stuff now and then summer stuff for the next one, fall
Yeah.
stuff for the next one, so on.
you have to, you almost have to be thinking that you're almost 2 seasons ahead, the way it falls.
So do we have one page or half of a page for EAC content?
I
Or
think
is it
it,
all relative?
like, I think it depends on what's like within, we usually try to say somewhere about half to a whole page, depending on what's happening. And we manage according to that. If there's room, we don't mind giving a whole page, but we don't commit a whole page to any organization every
Right.
time, because you may come back this time and really only need 3/4 of a page. And I've got another group that's using a page, just a half a page, and then another group that's 3/4, so we split it, in that way. And it's a little different than what we used to do. We have a little bit more freedom.
So Steve, to the point of educating the public, and you had said you think a lot of people don't know we're here, what we do. I did put together those 2 articles several weeks ago and sent them to you and Suzanne, primarily to be released externally. But one was, the focus was the rain garden is a year old. What is the rain garden? Why did the township put it in? Come take a look at it. And then the other one was, I think about the Brookside Park tree planting. And it talked about the 1,000 trees and the township planting these trees and the funding it got for that. So those were written to be sent out to newspapers or whatever. And I submitted them for review, and I just wondered whatever happened with them.
Okay, I guess I misunderstood what they were for. Because I expected those to be going into the one I was actually thinking was going to go into the May release. If you were
They
doing.
were meant to go out right now.
Okay,
To
well,
be in the Delaware County Times this week, so people could come over and see the rain garden, or, they were meant to be released as soon as possible. Not
So-
that they couldn't have been adapted for.
okay, because I thought they were supposed to be newsletter articles, and I said, I don't know what we're going to do with them, because that's how I thought they were submitted, because our newsletter had already gone.
No,
So I apologize. I misunderstood what was coming through.
so,
So-
Can you
What-
send something to Steve Grady too?
so tell me in the future how to avoid this from happening. Who do I send it to?
Well, and I guess the question is, what are you wanting? Because I mean,
Well, I
are
was-
you wanting to send it to the newspaper? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
As like a press release?
Yeah, because we used to do this more often. And I know I saw in my local newspaper, there was an article about the Board of Supervisors doing something, or they got some historical award for, and it was in the newspaper with
Yeah.
a picture of the Board of Supervisors. And I thought, well, this is great. The township is getting some positive publicity in some external newspaper. The township has done a lot of great things. I'll draft 2 more press
Gotcha.
releases.
Okay,
And that's what they.
We
were meant
will,
to
we
go
will
out.
forward them on to our communications person to do a press release. That's easy.
Okay, but in the future,
I need it to be clear that it's a press release. I think
not a newsletter article.
not a newsletter article. I thought it was designed to be a newsletter article and I put them aside as part of our next newsletter. That's my fault.
And Steve, where do the press releases go?
So the press releases, probably initially, I think Suzanne's probably the one who's doing most of those right now.
And then your communications person will handle the editing, the review and approval process and sending them out to the
Yes.
media. And do you know what news outlets they normally send those to?
I know it's to the local paper, so I'm assuming it's to the Delaware County Times or, but I will have to check with her. I'm not exactly who she's sending them to.
Okay,
They end up in Patch a lot too.
yeah, the patch.
Yeah,
Thanks.
she has several places that she sends them. When she does, I think she releases them to like 4 or 5 different locations. But the two that pick them up the most are the Patch and the Delaware County Times.
Okay, right, great.
And I
Friends and
apologize, I
neighbors.
misunderstood.
But we still don't have an article for the December deadline. Bird Town's too soon, you're saying you can't get that done?
I'd rather wait until the next one.
Okay,
but-
all right.
But why is Bird Towns too soon? Because it's not timely or because you can't get it ready fast enough or both?
Boom.
Okay, okay.
There's a lot on my plate right now.
Mhm.
But you know, get push come to shove or shove
Uh-huh.
come to push, whatever it is. Because I know the things that you've mentioned are important for our residents to know, but I also wanted to highlight the different components of Bird Town, which is not just about planting, advocacy, working with schools, right? And then ordinances, things like that.
Ideas?
Well, has Shade Tree selected an Arbor Day event? Are we going to have any, will they be doing any type of tree planting?
I meet with them this week, so I don't know the answer, but I'm sure they will. They've been talking about it.
Right, so that's
And-
something we could,
Well, yeah, or is the township gonna do anything like tree giveaways in the spring? Like, but I guess that might be folded in with whatever they're gonna do. Well, we just said that, having bird-friendly landscaping, lawn conversion, native plants, that would tie in with educational initiatives we've already made. I could try to put something together, it wouldn't be that hard just to talk about, green lawn landscaping ideas. Can throw
How
something.
about you
together.
and I work together?
Yeah,
we'll
I
get
mean,
something.
because we could mention the native plant ordinance. I think you need to keep reminding people.
I think every
Every
one
come
of our-
look at the rain gardens to see the native plants there. Go to Gable Park to see the native plants there. Consider reducing the lawn, things like that. Yeah, so we'll
and
say this.
actually, even in the League Conserve PA, they would have some content where you could basically, as long as you're not a copyright or infringement, but you would be able to kind of
Yeah,
use
there's
some of
so
that
many
information.
resources, just
Right.
you can repackage it. Okay, so Janet and I will do something
Okay.
on like bird-friendly native plant landscaping for the spring.
Bruce, what about the reusable bags that we were planning on giving out or to residents? Did we maybe have those ready for February? They could pick up a bag at the library or something like that. I don't know if that's too up in the air.
I'm not sure where that stands, to be honest with you,
Yeah, okay.
right now.
Yeah, because depending on, the whole sustainable business program would be great to promote if you knew where it stood.
Right. And this is more targeted towards the residents though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll put some thoughts on that based on today.
Send me ideas that you might have on that. Send me an email, anybody on the bag thing, how we could have the greatest impact. And we'll see if we can do it.
And Cindy, are you planning any type of rain garden, cleanup in the spring that you want to put into this deadline if you?
Might be hard to get a date.
It'd be very hard to get a date,
Yeah.
but,
Make
Yeah,
reference to
well-
it.
yeah, it's something that could.
Maybe you make reference to it and then ask them to go to the township website for more information.
Yeah.
You know, I was just gonna mention that a few minutes ago. Remember that you can use the website to drive more information and then use the newsletter to drive people to the website to get it. So like, for example, like Bruce, you mentioned, you know, a couple different things, one of them being a list of what the residents could do. You might put 5 of those in a newsletter article that just says that, but you might have 20 on the website
Right.
and then refer people to the website for those 20. Like if, you know, just, you might highlight a couple and you focus it more in, keep it real easy readable, but make it easy, because I think we get the newsletter on the website as well, and then we could set up links and do that.
Data from your website as to who's actually engaging in any of the links or?
Yeah, how many?
Like,
We get data, my understanding is we get data as to how many people go to the website. I've seen the data. I don't consider it very user-friendly on my end
Right.
to know exactly what people are doing. And that's part of the challenge is we have just,
because just to get on and do the agenda, you've got, I mean, to listen to the supervisors. So it might look like I'm engaging, you know, and when I'm actually just going there to get the link to watch the supervisors. meeting.
yeah, no, I think we can tell the difference in that, where I think that, like, we know how many people do searches and things like that. But if they're just getting the link to go to the meeting, it does count as a trip. But it doesn't necessarily tell us what they did.
Then just do a lot of teasers that in the content, you know, teasing out this information is available on the website. And that way you can pin down your specific things on the website.
And we've used successfully the QR codes.
Yeah.
In locations, and people have actually done that quite, and we can take them right to the page on the website that you want.
That's a good.
And so just an idea of, you almost could spend less time actually, you could know what you're aiming people to be and not actually have it on the website for 2 months later,
Right.
almost. And it gives you a chance to put exactly what you want into place.
Mhm.
So going back to a cleanup day, if you know that we can build a page, go ahead and set it up, just not publish it until we're ready further down the road.
So if December 12th is this deadline, is it safe to say that March 12th is the next one, or is it just,
I mean, you can say it's within the week.
so let's say the first week of March is the next deadline, just so we
Yeah.
have ourselves. Sure.
And then the Facebook page too, the township has a Facebook page.
Yep.
Well, Rose and Steve do that really well.
Ready to move on to the next item? Which is, a couple people have asked me, it's 7.6. A couple people have asked me, like, what's next here in terms of membership? And Steve, you can help me on this. I know that the township has advertised for 2 new members. I'm assuming that they've got some responses, or they will get some responses. And the supervisors, Steve, will select 2 people to join our group.
Well, let me be clear. It is the supervisors that selected. I have very little to do with it other
Okay.
than setting it out,
All right,
just so you know.
all right.
Let me also state that there's 2 of you that have resigned out of cycle.
Right.
Okay, and I think yours was actually, I could have it wrong. One of you, Harry, or you went off in 2023, at the end of 2023, and then one of you went off at the end of 2024.
Okay.
This committee also has 3 that go off at the end of 2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe everyone who goes off at the end of 22 has asked to stay on.
Uh-huh.
So there's just so that you know, there's 5 openings
Okay.
at this point.
Uh-huh.
And so, we're putting it out. Now, that doesn't, I mean, very likely the board will appoint the 3 people who want to come back, right?
Right.
And do that. But I just wanted to be clear that when you see it on if you're looking on the reorg list in January, you're going to actually see 5 openings.
Okay.
And so that it's going to feel like a lot of the board.
Uh-huh.
And so I just wanted to make everybody be aware of that, because I don't want you to feel overwhelmed,
Uh-huh.
but I believe, and Rose, correct me if I'm wrong, all,
Right?
I think it was all, you're right, and I think you'll all 3 mention that you would want to come back on. I'm assuming the board is going to do that. I don't know what the board's decision is, but just so you know, that is, that I just didn't want to surprise if somebody looks at the agenda in January and says, there's 5, I only thought there were 2. There's
Okay.
actually 5.
All right. So 5 will come on board, and then there's a vote, right? Amongst the group in terms of the positions that the various people.
Interestingly enough, this is the one, and I don't think the board has necessarily exercised this, but this is the one committee that actually says the board picks the chair.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it actually says it in the ordinance.
Uh-huh.
And so I was going through the ordinance last week, making sure we had everything in line, but going through, Rose has been doing a great job. We've actually been going through all of the resolutions and ordinances that set up all the committees. But this is one, and everyone's just a little different how
Okay.
it's done.
Uh-huh.
But this is one that actually says the board picks the chair. I don't think they've been doing that. If I recall, you all have been selecting your own. I don't know. I can't speak to what the board will do
Right.
going forward. But typically, yes, you select who your chair is going to be, you select who your vice chair is going to be, and who your secretary is going to be.
If there's anybody in this group that's interested in being the chair, they have the same opportunity as these 2 new candidates, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that unless the board exercises its right to choose the chair,
Uh-huh.
if they leave it up to this, then what we've done in the past is we've come to the first meeting.
Yep.
Usually the old chair runs the meeting until the new chair is appointed.
Right.
Sometimes we've done a temp chair
Uh-huh.
in that process. Couple times I've done it to get a committee started just to move forward.
Okay.
And then usually it's one of the first things we do at the first meeting of the month, or, in January, first meeting of the year. And within the first 10 minutes, you have who your chair, your vice chair, and your secretary are, and you go forward. What I suspect happens in a lot of committees, everybody kind of talks to each other ahead of time and says,
Sure.
are you interested? Are you interested?
Uh-huh.
And you say, oh, yeah, I'd do this, or no, I wouldn't do that. And then when you come in, you move forward and you're going to make a recommendation, I'll make a motion that you will be chair and, that kind of thing.
So that first meeting in January can occur before the supervisors meet.
It cannot,
Okay.
because you have to have the appointment of the supervisor. So there's no meeting, if I'm right, I could be off.
I think we had to wait till like January 7th or 10th this year, remember, because we had to. wait
Yeah.
for them
Like
to
the
be,
second
We're-
week, not the first.
yeah, they had to
um,
take their positions first before
Right.
they could even select.
So January 1st is on a Sunday. So January 2nd, the offices will be closed and no action will happen. So January 3rd, the board will meet.
Okay. So
Okay, so the earliest would be whenever we scheduled the next, typically we've always scheduled to be the following Monday. However, that following Monday would be a board meeting. And so I have to look at that, how that's going to be. And I'm going to talk about next year's schedule a little bit later down on the agenda.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, I have to tell you, I have not seen the Aronimink under 7.7, I have not seen the proposal. This is different, as I understand it, from their last proposal. right?
It is.
It's a pretty significant project.
I think this is
Moving
a,
swimming pool. or-
I think they're redoing the swimming pool and some other
Uh-huh.
things.
Mhm. I'm just wondering whether this is going to be a trend at Aronimink, additional building.
Well, you know, it's probably like, any of our larger projects in town,
Okay,
you know, Episcopal Academy,
right.
Dunwoody,
Uh-huh.
you know, Aronimink.
Mhm.
I think you're gonna see that as they see needs,
Right.
they're gonna come in
Uh-huh.
and they're gonna, you know, when we have things that are aging,
Uh-huh.
people are gonna come in and replace them, you know,
Sure.
particularly with the expectation. I mean, Aronimik's not a inexpensive golf club to join. I'm sure they need to keep a certain level of,
Uh-huh.
you know, level of services and things like that up so that people will want to stay. And so I'm sure that we will see that as part of it.
I just look at their 150 acres of woods, you know, and I just don't want that.
Yeah, of course, I'd be really surprised if they delve that far back, you know, I mean, they're keeping everything pretty close to the clubhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been their approach.
Mhm.
Well, I did review the article and I mean, all the plans and do have a couple comments and questions. But my first question is where, the same question we always have, where does this stand in the review and approval process? When I looked at, maybe it was that application or one of the forms, it said that it had the boxes checked off that this was both the preliminary and the final plan.
Yep.
So when does it come up, before what body, for what action?
So my understanding, they're going to initially be before the planning commission here in November. And so that will be the first review. I have not looked at it in depth to know. The question will be, will the planning commission do it in one sitting or will they do it in two? The planning commission has almost on a rare occasion, they've done it in one sitting. They pretty much are taking two. But there's a clock that starts once that application is submitted, once it's scheduled, and we have to stay on that clock. And I believe it's 90 days, so that gives you an idea. What I don't know is like I said, I haven't looked at it enough to know how much.
Well, I can tell you, they're pulling out the pools where they were and
Yeah.
putting in lawn. They're gonna move the pools, put in a couple pools. They're gonna like reconfigure some tennis courts and pickleball courts and add a tennis court. And it's a total of 19,000 square feet of new impervious surface. And they're planning on having 2, maybe 3, looks like underground infiltration
Yeah.
basins to an underground, right? Or,
Yep.
yeah.
I think they were underground.
Yeah, to collect the stormwater.
Yeah.
I think they said that the decking around one of the pools might have pervious surface below it. So that was like, to me, the only other innovative or slightly different type of stormwater management. So my questions were, has the township engineer reviewed the stormwater management plan?
Well, they will between now and the end of the month. I don't know that he has yet.
But is that now and before it goes to the planning commission? Like, will the planning commission have the engineers' comments?
Oh,
on it?
absolutely,
Okay, so
absolutely.
it will be before that planning.
Yeah,
commission
yes.
November
And that's what
meeting.
I'm saying. The plan came in, I think, middle of the week before last. And, we started getting it out as it became available.
Yeah.
And so the engineer now has it. When I talked to the engineer, he felt that he would have a chance to have it reviewed before the meeting. What I don't know, typically the engineer's comments are like a book, right? You know, there's usually 4 or 5 pages and they make all these comments and they state all these things. I don't think there's a zoning issue on this one, if I recall. I didn't see anything that jumped out at me. Like, I did a quick review, but I didn't go into the depth. Andy and I haven't talked about it to the level of saying, is there something that he sees coming up out of it that's above what's normal, on zoning? And so I don't think there's anything zoning. And if there's nothing zoning, then, could it potentially be just a 1 meeting before planning commission? Maybe, but they would have to have all their ducks in a row. The engineer would have had to had it reviewed. And then their engineer would have had to have a chance to respond and say, yes, we're willing to do all of the things the township engineer has said need to be done. And some of them may need to be done prior to the planning commission saying, we're going to accept that. Sometimes we do it conditioned on what the engineer has said. Sometimes they want to see it. And that's what I don't know.
But when is the planning commission meeting this month? Because if the EAC wanted to put together a comment letter,
Yep.
this is our meeting, it's come and gone. So we would have to somehow do that by some other means.
Yeah, so here's 2 times that, and this is one of we're going to talk about this when we talk about scheduling of the EAC meeting. One of the things that I would recommend is that the planning commission, I believe, is on the 22nd this month.
Tuesday.
On Tuesday, because Thursday is Thanksgiving. And nobody wants to be here on Thanksgiving evening.
Yeah, 'cause they're
Discussing a
usually
plan.
Thursdays, yeah. Okay.
So they moved it to Tuesday, which has always been what we've done in the past. We've always moved it to the prior Tuesday. And then let's assume that the planning commission were to go ahead and 100% support and say, oh, yes, move right ahead. Don't pass go, just move right along. And the board's request would be that it couldn't be on their agenda until at the earliest, the December 12th meeting. So you would have a chance to meet again and potentially put a comment letter together before the board did the approval. Now, if you had a comment that you want to take an comment made at the planning commission for them to consider before making a recommendation, then you probably need to come up with it tonight.
Well, I would suggest, I looked briefly at the letter. I remember too, Aronimink got a variance for when they extended their patio area. Remember it last year? And that was a rather big project. I didn't see any lawn conversions or any in meadows in lieu of, the greenways. There's applications where they could be taking some really green steps, and I didn't see anything that they're doing that's innovative or kind of compensating for. I know they're upgrading their pool and they're doing these things, and they're wonderful, and God bless them. It's great for the community to have such great facilities, but we are talking a significant amount of surface that will be, covered up. So if we could just make the recommendation, because, and also too, with the brand new environment, with our brand new township engineer, we really haven't seen what their work is like. So I don't know what they would typically, recommend, but I would have hoped to have some lawn conversions. I would have liked to see some meadows in the areas outside of the greenways. Just something new and different, because it just seems like a lot of, and
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines, because I thought, where is it deficient? What could we ask them to do? And that big lawn area, which is going to be a new lawn area, to me was kind of, seemed like it could have a lot of potential for being better than what it would be instead of just big flat lawn area.
Right.
It could be,
meadows.
there could be some kind of either a meadow or
Grasslands.
that is because the turf area is essentially impervious surface.
Right.
Very little water absorbs. And it's at the top of the hill, and it's just downhill from there into what they said is an unnamed tributary of Darby Creek. So my thinking was that we could recommend that they consider doing some sort of green infrastructure, whether it's a bioswale, plantings on that hillside, a meadow, something other than just turf grass with nothing around it.
Deep rooted
Yeah,
native plants that can
yeah.
soak up. the-
Well, and then that was my second point is, I did an analysis of the plants that were recommended in landscaping plan. And there were 54 plants, and I think at least half of them were all non-native species. So I wanted to put together a recommendation saying, just, go on record from the EAC pointing out that the township passed this native plant ordinance or resolution, and, we would be hopeful that they would keep that in mind and adjust their planting and put that in there. So those were kind of the two things that I was thinking of, is that the lawn area could be handled better and the native plants. And then just to make sure or to understand what the engineer came across, the entire stormwater management plan, I think was like 136 pages. And 5 or 3 of it's narrative and the rest is just calculations, which we can't even begin to understand. So that's what the engineer does.
But you could turn that around too with that, to say the areas that you're talking about, possible lawn conversions, how they would benefit would be less maintenance than, lawn, they wouldn't have to be cutting the lawn. They could provide that roping off area. It kind of has, grasses. You could do things that have an attractive nature because you don't want it in any way disparage
yeah.
it away from their beautiful grounds.
Yeah,
but you
now-
could just find it.
It could be that they're, it's right outside that building that they're adding to. I forget what they called it. The Belton-
Education center or something like that.
No, it's like the Belton Building or something. I
Okay.
think it's where they entertain.
Okay.
So maybe they're hoping that, like, if they have social functions there, people can go out and mill about on the lawn. They might want a flat lawn for like setting up trees or things like their tents. That's why we can make suggestions, but if the EAC is open to that, I mean, I can draft something and then bring it to the meeting in December.
And just ask them to, we are limited what we can ask them to do, right? As long as. the
Well,
plan-
here's what I would argue.
Recommendations,
You can ask,
Right.
right, you're more limited in what you can make them do. Right, but you can say, hey, as a good neighbor, would you consider? One of the things that I keep coming back to, with them, is it possible for them to continue to expand how they are doing their irrigation? Because a lot of their irrigation is done by water that's run off from what's there. I mean, they have a huge irrigation system that they've already put in place, that the grounds actually drain to that so that they can come back and water again. And so,
That's a
mean-
really good point. I mean, if they're collecting water in those underground detention basins, why not engineer them so that they can be like cisterns?
well, they do have a whole section that's like that.
Right, but I'm saying these
But-
new ones.
Yeah,
because
but
they're
can
gonna
they
be
add
huge.
that into that process?
Yeah.
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 So that's what I would look at.
But in terms of timing, if this gets brought up at the supervisors meeting, which is kind of like at the very end of the
Yeah.
process, I'm wondering how effective the recommendation will be.
Well, you have to remember that anybody that gets anything going, anything that comes before this, the only decision body in the whole process is the supervisors.
Right.
Everybody else is recommending.
Right.
But still, your point is well taken, because at that point, the planning commission will have made their could
Right.
have made their deliberation, they could have made their vote. And so then that comes to the board of supervisors, and what they get a vote or a recommendation from the planning commission to do something, and then they get a comment letter from us.
So if we get it before November 22nd, so that
Yeah, but I don't know how we could do that with the sunshine law. How could we get a letter?
Agree to these things
So you
now.
will
Oh.
put together,
Is that enough to
If
agree?
you
to the point?
say, we would like, I'm just making sure the way this was written, and it does say you can make a decision, possible action. You could say, we want a decision letter that addresses these 5 things. You can address those 5 things. Absolutely. no problem, and you can do that. Where it would become an issue is if one or two of you came up with something additional afterwards, then it would need to come back before this body,
Like another topic.
another
So I think if
topic.
we just put a broad topic of encouraging them to have green and techniques in terms of lawn conversion, meadows, or any things they could possibly do.
Plantings.
Right, because we're really not asking for much.
Here's what I suspect.
Trees getting.
Here's what I would recommend that you do.
They say
planted.
no trees are gonna be cut down and only three trees are to be planted.
So here's what I would really recommend for you, and see if this makes sense. I would build a standard letter that you think that you typically would want to, the things that you would want to make sure are thought about. You're always going to want to address steep slopes, right? I mean, that's a big piece for you as a group. So I would always say, we're going to look at steep slopes and we're going to look at very steep slopes. You're always going to want stormwater to be innovative and more than just a basin that water collects in and off it goes, right? I mean, that's the kind of things that you're important. So I would take the things that you value as a group and that you think you have a chance to weigh in on and that are important. I would build myself a standard letter that is there. And then I would have that letter as being my review that I came back. And then if there were specifics, when you get something on the agenda as a group, you could go through and say, we ought to be making comment about this, steep slopes. We ought to be making comment about very steep slopes. We ought to be making comment about the stormwater in this spot. I mean, stormwater is probably going to be in everyone. I don't know of any project that's not going to come before you that's not going to have an issue of stormwater. Yeah, I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
But I think if you had that built, and then as you looked at a plan, you're not trying to say, what is it that we're going to talk about? You already kind of know the things that you put as your value points.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you may not come up with something. I always leave another spot that's called other, to catch something else. But if you had that in place, then as you go through, you just kind of check off and say, here are the 4 suggestions. Here are the 4 suggestions. And I think as you guys got a plan, you could probably then start going through it much more quickly.
I had that same thought when I was going through this, and I thought, how can we make this more streamlined? Because it always seems like such a heavy lift. But when I was looking at the forms, I had that thought. I thought, it's not that hard. There are recurring issues. You put together a checklist, and if we all had that checklist, then I think the rest of you would also feel more empowered and guided, like when you're looking at this, to say, what am I really looking for here? Because there's a lot that's not relevant, that it's kind of overwhelming when you look at all of this. But if you have that checklist. So I see 2 deliverables here. One, going forward, is a draft of a template that could serve as the basis of our comment letter, review letter. And then second would be a agronomy specific comment letter, which would just kind of precede this template, but be informed by what we think it will have. And why don't I make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Should I say that? Put the effort into articulating it?
Yeah, I think if there's specific things you want to address in the agronomic
Yeah,
letter,
yeah.
I would make a motion to do that.
Okay.
I think your template, I don't think you need to make a motion on that. I think you can come back at the next meeting. We'll put that as an agenda item.
Right.
And I'm making a note to add to next agenda, a template. And that could be for discussion at that time. I don't think you need to make a motion on that tonight.
Okay, I move that I draft, or the EAC prepare a comment letter in response to the current agronomic development plan that would address the topics of stormwater management and that would encourage innovative use of stormwater management techniques, such as the possibility of water reuse, among other ideas. Secondly, that would encourage the use of green infrastructure and landscaping practices, such as the use of bioswales, meadows, native plants, to provide more native habitat and contribute to stormwater management. And the third topic would be to encourage the consideration of aligning their plant selection with the township's native plant resolution.
I think the only other issue with that be if the steep slopes are impacted and then the pervious surface, if there was anything they could use in lieu of. I know for the pickleball courts and things like that, but there's honeycomb and other options that they can use for paving.
Okay, so in the stormwater management section, we will encourage the use of impervious surfaces, and I believe there no steep slopes are.
I don't think there's any steep slopes, but when I
It
looked
was
at the
not
plan.
checked. I didn't see anything about that, so
Have you made a motion looking for,
I so moved, so
okay,
I'm looking for a second.
I second it.
Okay.
done.
Wait, did we all vote?
Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay. Passes unanimously.
Good, thank you.
Steve, you're on.
Yeah, so actually, I think it's appropriate to have this conversation right after that issue.
Uh-huh.
One of the challenges that I've noticed is that because you meet at the very beginning of the month,
Right.
then we are always behind the eight ball when it comes to these kind of things, because you don't have the benefit of any review letter even being given out or anything like that. So one of the recommendations, and let me back up and say, I've been looking at schedules for all of the township meetings. And most of our staff who are doing trying to tie staff back to who's going to different meetings. I happen to come to this one, but there's nights that George is out. There's nights that I'm out. There's, it's a night that Andy's out. So I put a proposal kind of initially to the board just to kind of get some feedback from them, and before I put it on the agenda for them to pass, they wanted me to bring it back to each committee. And so I am making a recommendation that we move the EAC meeting from the first Monday of the month to the third Thursday of the month, same time, 5 o'clock. But that we would move it to the third Thursday. It will do two things. One is by being later in the month, you would have had, particularly with planning and projects like this, you would have had more time to look at it and hopefully be able to come up with something that you're prepared to put together by the time it comes out. And potentially, because it's a week before the actual meeting, the planning commission meeting, we may have the letter back from the engineer, which might give you some more input where you would say, oh, the engineer noted this, we would like to recommend this. And then you would be able to do that. You would be right before zoning. The zoning would be at 7. So it would have a limiting factor of a 2-hour time frame. I don't think that's an issue for this group. I've been meeting with you for pretty much a long time, and on a rare occasion, tonight may be the exception, but on a rare occasion, you go past an hour and a half. You're typically an hour and a half. And I think that's not a problem, but I also know the board is wanting me just to kind of run that out there, particularly for those committees that have people who are staying. If you all said Thursday night would never work for me, then we probably need to know that so that it's there. But the other advantage is to be honest, part of it's a selfless advantage on our staff. I'm trying to get our staff, if you're out a night, you're not out 4 nights, you may be only out 2 nights because you're doubling up meetings. You know, and so we're looking at trying to move several meetings around. The other advantage is that you always have at least 2 meetings a year that we have to move. And one of them we moved because of the beginning of the year, you're never able to meet your first Monday because the board hasn't met yet. And so you always miss that one. And then
Labor Day.
you always miss Labor Day.
And July sometimes.
And some, and I was gonna say, and then in other years, you also miss Fourth of July. So this was part of the thought process of doing that. And so I'm throwing it out there. I don't know that you have to vote on it. It's just, I need feedback. If somebody says, oh my gosh, that's absolutely the worst thing in the world, I just need to know that, but that would be the proposal.
All right, so that's the third Thursday of the month at 5 PM.
That's right.
Okay with me? It's a suggestion.
Yes.
Fine with me.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it works.
Kids over there, you okay with Thursday?
It's the same, yeah,
Yeah,
5 PM.
I
If it was 7 PM, it'd be a different story.
Yeah.
5 PM works, yeah.
yeah, I kept it at 5 because you guys have been used to meeting at 5. It
Yeah.
seemed to make sense.
Right.
And I couldn't put it on top of the zoning hearing board meeting. So, but if there was a project that came in and had zoning hearing board that you wanted to testify in front of,
Right.
the advantage would be you're already here. And you maybe literally walk out of having an approved thing and walk right next into the next meeting.
They might get.
Take the seats out there.
Yeah, they may be a little concerned, but anyway, that was the thought. One of the other committees I plan on putting right before the planning commission is another one is Shade Tree because of that same reason. You know, at least everybody's acting prior to the planning commission moving, and they have a little bit of time to get everything. They have as long to see it before the planning commission sees it.
All right, so that will start in January? Are you saying?
Well, the board hasn't approved it yet. I just wanted to give the board feedback, having talked to the different committees. It'll bring it up for each committee. All right,
Okay,
thank you.
next item, we moved to 8 and 8.1. I wanted to give an update on the plastic bag ordinance. Supervisors, upon second review, kind of tabled this, project. And in lieu of that, the Green Business Initiative is, going to be promoting, the use of less plastic to the businesses that we talk to. And with the momentum of that and just what's happening in the world, we're thinking that people will comply voluntarily, much like Whole Foods is an example, without the necessity of an ordinance.
Because they're a large corporation.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
opposed to the smaller ones.
Uh-huh.
I did set in, if I may talk
Yeah.
about what I did set in with the Montgomery County Plastic Bag Initiative. And it was really their recommendation that the ban be put in place and that there be a 15-cent charge on all bags. Because for several reasons. One, if you don't have a charge, then it's more expensive for the provider because plastic bags are cheaper. The paper bags are more expensive. And it's more expensive for the businesses. And also, it forces, we don't want people to decide, okay, we're just going to switch and buy paper now. Because that's still something that gets thrown away. So the purpose is to have people get in the habit of bringing their own. And by having a charge for it, it then makes it better for the consumer. I'll bring my own rather than pay 15 cents for a paper bag.
Mhm. Well, there's concerns about the township's authority to tell a business to charge 15 cents. That's an impediment on to our ordinance.
But
So-
considering that it costs a lot more for them to get
I-
paper ones
I hear
than
you.
plastic. ones.
They're,
It
they're,
really
they're not,
their benefit.
they're not willing to put that into
Yeah.
law. I guess
Yeah,
is what-
I think, I think I think the township's position is that when it, if I can kind of put it in a nutshell. We do not believe there's authority given to the township to put in a fee. We do not have a problem if a business puts in the fee. So, I mean, it's fine. Like, for example, we've talked about Whole Foods. I've been, my wife and I actually do most of our shopping at Wegmans, which isn't in town. But if you go to Wegmans now, you can't get a plastic bag. You can only get paper, and I think they're charging 5 or 10 cents for a paper bag. I don't know, because I've never had to get a bag. We always take our own, but we are seeing larger corporations doing this on their own. What we're hoping is that through the Green Business Initiative, that we incentivize that with some of the things that we've talked about, that businesses would choose to do it. We're not saying that they shouldn't charge. We actually think it's fine. We just don't believe that there's anything in the code of, particularly for second-class townships, that gives us the authority to force a business owner to do it. And the risk on the other side is if we are challenged in court and we lose, there's two things that have happened. One is we haven't collected the fee, but we would be required to return the fee. And how do we do that? Because we didn't actually collect the fee. And so there's two sides to that in that piece. And that's the reason why, from a legal standpoint, the township is uncomfortable requiring a fee. But I think the key that's a little bit bigger than this is that at this point, I don't think the supervisors are wishing to move forward with a specific ordinance in this way. I think they're really wanting to put the focus on the energy and the energy behind the Green Business Initiative, the sustainable business piece. If that,
Yeah,
it,
and the other part too, in terms of changing residents' behavior, that's something they can do, is encourage them to bring their own bags to the grocery store. I don't think many people do it.
I
think-
don't think, how about for the December 12th article, make that one of our suggestions, make plastic bags. Make people aware of what, we're trying to do and encourage people to use their own reusable bags and.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at a little bit before. I think like we need to put focus on educating
Yes,
businesses as well as residents around
Yeah.
that. I did listen, I wasn't able to attend that single-use plastic committee, but I did watch the recording.
I think, Joe, you attended that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I reached out to, is it Richard Metz? Is
Yes,
that his name?
yeah.
To be added to the
Yes.
next meeting. I'd be curious to kind of pick their brain and just, is there a toolkit or something that we can put together to give out to businesses? Hey, here's a simple way to do this from a volunteer perspective instead of an ordinance or,
I think a lot of
So, I
residents.
think it's just starting to create a dialogue.
Don't like if you start forcing things upon people. They have our township and our residents seem to be very, cautious. I went through a situation with Greer Park. And there was so many advantages for what we were doing environmentally, but people didn't understand the issues. So if we give this an opportunity for them to learn about the issues and then educate them, I think we'll be able to get a different outcome.
But that's that. And Dane is gonna take the lead on the green business and he's gonna have his hands full because I was gonna help. And he will need a helper, so.
And where do
Yeah.
we stand with that? Can we get a little update?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question has always been, there was the ordinance in motion, and then there was the sort of opt-in program that was specifically vague to not have requirements because we don't have the authority or the expertise to go into a business and recommend something, you need to update your lighting, or you need to eliminate plastic, or update your fleet, right? But I think we can be more specific now, knowing that this has support of the Board of Supervisors. So if you're a restaurant or a retailer, we ask that you eliminate plastic, and then you can get, some press, good press, you can get a decal, part of that media kit. So I think there'll be more specifics around that. So Bruce and, I think we need to
go back and tweak that. a
I think
little
we
bit.
got the elevator pitch down, we got a database of the businesses. I'm trying to.
We just need to build a good enough carrot for businesses to want to do it.
Exactly.
Right, and that's the
Can we
trick.
get any of that information in the December 12th
I don't think so.
magazine?
I think we had an article, right?
Right. But I meant specifically what you were just saying, because.
I think
that's-
there's a better opportunity to communicate that by working with Paul and
Paul.
the Newtown Square Business Association. He's been asking us for months to get in front of their general assembly to do a presentation. We just haven't had
He's coming up to his
His Christmas-
annual Christmas.
Yes.
a
That's
luncheon,
big-
right?
That is his biggest event,
Right.
attendance. Do
So
you think we could get before them then?
we've been invited to do that. Yeah.
He's been inviting us, so.
Here's one other thought that I'm gonna throw out, and I don't, I hope it doesn't muddy the waters, because I hate to muddy the waters when you guys are working in a very specific area. But you know, our sustainability that we do, the PA sustainability has levels. And it might be that you know, I don't want to make it difficult for you, because I think you want to do this, but if you start putting together certain criteria, there might be levels of sustainability that a business would get to. And in recognition, and, you know, we could do that on an annual basis in the newsletter. We could do, you know, maybe do some things that would help encourage that
Sure.
to get what it is that you're wanting to have happen.
Right.
You know, where it, you know, the one thing that I know is not everything happens overnight, right?
Right.
You know, I mean, we want to be platinum or whatever it is. We're where we are, but we have to take steps, right? And sometimes you have to take
Incremental.
incremental steps. And so this gives us an opportunity before the businesses and have incremental changes that they can make. Like you mentioned, lighting might be one of those things where, you know, if somebody makes a commitment to lighting, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
If they don't have LED lighting today and they come back and they put in LED lighting, they ought to get some recognition, right? You know, I mean, that ought to be a big deal. That's not the same as somebody, you know, doing something that, you know, putting a green tree in front of their building. I mean, not that that's not important, that's huge, but it's a lot more investment to
Right.
replace all my lighting or to replace my electric, you know, whatever I'm doing for heating or whatever, improving or, you know, doing those things. Putting in electric car charging stations in their
Yeah.
parking lot. You know, how do we incentivize those kind of things as part of sustainability?
Sure.
Well,
Just
a big
a
part of
thought.
it was making a self-assessment
Yeah.
checklist, right? And we have a website template that I'm working with Suzanne to put on the website for business to go on. They could do their self-assessment. They submit it. We do some type of, you know, audit. I don't want to call it an audit, but it would be a conversation with that business owner. You know, and then some kind of commitment. Hey, how can we take it to the next level? And then that would be it. I don't think we could manage levels like gold, platinum, you know, by individual. We just don't have the bandwidth for that.
Right.
But I think a simple assessment each year is doable.
Yeah.
If it was a self-service.
What about Tiffin? Remember we
Yep.
watched, they did the article and they did remember the podcast they showed on their plastic reuse? Are they still doing that? Because I thought they were supposed to do it here and then they ran into some complications in the Newtown Square location. Is
I
that
don't
still
know
the
if
case?
they've actually implemented that in Newtown Square.
Okay.
But they have Philly locations, I know.
Right, I know the.
Like the renewals,
But I was saying
whatever.
that would be a business that we could spotlight because the initiatives that they're trying to do are pretty incredible. So, that would be, if indeed, if you're reaching out to them for this program, and if they are enacting them, that would be a great program to bring attention to, because it's accomplishing your goals as well as, you know, helping everything that we've been asking them to do.
Yeah, we were looking for low hanging fruit
Yep.
first. Dunwoody's doing all kinds of good stuff. We're trying to get them signed up, and, you know, they're visible and they'd be
Yes.
great.
Yes.
SAP, I'm not sure where they fit in the mix, but they've done tremendous things there.
Green roof, I mean, they're water, everything.
Yeah, all the plastics going in place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we could find the people that have
Doing it
already
now.
embraced it.
Yes.
It would help.
If we're done with everything else, I have two
Yeah.
things. The tree, Newtown Township has put in the Christmas tree on St. Albert Circle, so it
Big
looks
tree?
fabulous. They put it in
Wow.
today. So everyone can take a look at that. That I'm excited about that. And I really think it's important. We had Harry Brennan on our board, and we never really kind of took the time to publicly acknowledge his
Uh-huh.
work and his effort. And I think it would be nice if we had a letter just
Uh-huh.
to thank him, because from the board, I think it's important that we acknowledge his work. It's something he really, was passionate about. He cared about, he was on a lot of different committees. And I think it would be nice if we could have some type of professional letter that thanks him for his efforts, because it's
Okay.
important.
Yeah, he walked the walk and talked the talk.
Yeah.
He was good.
Yeah,
So-
so. Can we direct that ourselves, or can we get it through the township? Just a thank you. I just thought it would be nice.
We
You know,
can-
he's
Yeah, if we compose it, will the township send something to
just
Harry?
brief, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think,
You can
Yeah.
put it on
I think
letterhead
that's
coming from here.
That'd
Just
be
get it to
nice.
Rose.
leaving our township too.
Yeah,
so-
that'd be a nice touch.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why he has to step off, because he's
Yeah.
moving out of.
And I mean, it was important that we acknowledge it.
Yeah, he was a resource. With that, we're gonna, next, there's no public comment, I assume. Steve, nothing? Okay. The one thing we're certainly talk about at our next meeting is a little more detail on this spreadsheet, things to do. And what was the other thing we threw in? I wrote it down.
The template.
The template, yeah. Yeah.
And the content for the December 12th.
Okay, with that, wow.
5 minutes.
7:55. This is the end of the meeting, 6:55. Look at that.
Well, that's 7 o'clock. They didn't change it.
I know.
I've actually been watching that all.
I like your tie.
Thank you.
Yes. Superb,